Hey buddies, and I'm back today with another type of content, and it's called Do Not Make My Mistakes and try all the aspects of the new builds, all new concepts when you are trying to build something new. And there is nothing wrong with this build. It's really great for mapping, it just clears everything with Ancestral Call and the new cluster on the tree, which gives you splash damage and additional strike for the additional enemy. But on paper, even single target looked really great. We can see here around 23-25 million DPS with more than 100 stacks of trauma, and we mitigate all our damage from trauma because of our enhanced armor and physical damage reduction provided by the renewed strength of blood. But what's wrong with it? The first one is multi-strike. The multi-strike support doesn't give you trauma stacks with any repeats that we get, and the second one, we cannot accelerate our attack speed till these numbers because we are dependent on rage and it stacks, and the divergent trauma works the more attack speed you have, the more attack speed you would have later, but the duration of these trauma stacks are not that great to enhance them for the single target. Yeah, we can go for blitz charges on Berserker, but here I decided to use some another path with 40% more damage and the Defy Pain cluster to mitigate some damage from trauma, and we use Divine Shield not to have problems with mana because we are using our energy shield for these purposes, and we're utilizing Strength of Blood to give additional physical damage reduction instead of 170,000 armor we have. We use the Oscillating Sceptre for some elemental overload purposes, and for the Strength of Blood purposes we use maximum total recovery from Life Leech on the tree with pact, and some Fortify from the tree and from the cluster javel, or not the cluster javel but the timeless javel, the little pride, and we have 27 Fortify stacks. We have around 81% elemental resistances, and we are practically immortal to physical damage because at first we have the physical damage reduction from the Pantheon, and our armor and strength of blood, so we do not even take damage even at high amount of trauma stacks. But as you can see here, the clearance on the tier 14 and tier 16 maps is ridiculously great, but on single target we have some problems with this trauma generation, and yeah, the concept really works. It can be given some life, but there is something that I need to change for this concept, but it can't be playable here in this condition because I would like to give this build a chance to be our endgame build for even uber bosses, and it can do this with such amount of survivability that it has. But the problem is something needs to be changed with the trauma stacking and trauma gaining, because we don't care about how many stacks we have. We will mitigate all of them. So there is the thing I would like to tell, and let's go to the guide itself. As I've said before, we are utilizing the Berserker, and we have the Rage path, the Defy Pain for maximum total recovery from Life Leech to enhance our Little Pride, the Strength of Blood keystone, which we have here, and it now provides additional physical damage reduction for the amount of Life Leech that we have. And as we are using the petrified blood and the amount of reserved life is a bit lower than the half of our life, we get the instant over Leech, and it doesn't end at any time. the Slayer's Ascendancy, so it's the cheap version of the Slayer. To provide our survivability, we also use Fortify, and the fortification we grab from the tree, additional stacks from the Lethal Pride on the tree that you can grab through the Timeless Javel calculator, and this is the current version. I will also provide the final that I've get. The keystone on there, our cluster Javel, the overload, gives us some Fortify chance, and the Watcher's Eye gives us the full cold, physical to cold conversion with the another point on the tree in the cold cluster. To utilize the Strength of Blood keystone, we grab all maximum total recovery nodes on the tree to enhance the power of this Javel, and we grab them onto clusters of Leech with pact and Berserker's Ascendancy when we're hit. It gives us a large amount of physical damage reduction. For the damage, we use the Oscillating Sceptre for elemental overload, and we craft it with the essence for the attack speed, then some elements, and after that we just make a multi-mode with some increased physical damage and chance to poison to help our Golden Rule Javel to walk and inflict poison on enemies, and after that it inflicts poison on ourselves. And as we're using Tainted Pact, we do not take damage from this chaos damage, and it also heals us. And also we use here hits can be evaded, not to bother about our accuracy rating. As we are using the divergent chance to bleed, we also inflict bleeding, and the Apep's Supremacy Shield gives us the opportunity to take chaos damage from bleeding, and it also heals us while we are leeching. And while we are leeching, we all chaos and bleeding damage heals us, and it's a great amount of recovery that we can get. Also, the shield gives us additional +3 to all elemental resistances while we are poisoned, and that's great. The red trail allows our flicker strike to walk, and also we are inflicted with bleeding, and we heal even much more. The gloves are basic, just we need to some physical damage converted into cold, and we use it in combination with the Watcher's Eye for hatred physical to cold conversion, and also the node on the tree for fist to cold conversion of the cold mastery. But instead of this, you can also use the implicit modifiers from the Ethereal World or Syrian Exact, I don't remember, for additional fist to cold conversion, and then we can throw our Watcher's Eye and have some more useful stats. But it all depends on the budget and on the availability on the trade. The rings are for utility purposes. We use Frostbite, and on our Tainted Pact Amulet we would like to have the corruption for additional curse, but here at this point I figured out that this build doesn't work as it was intended on paper, and I decided not to throw even much more currency into it. In this case, on the ring we would like to have just stats for intelligence, life, and resistances to cap, because the problem for this build was to put all the components of it together, and one of the most difficult were the resistances themselves. On the amulet we would like to have charisma as the enchantment. For mana spending, we use the Divergent Diadem helmet, which gives us some mana reservation, and we use the Purity of Elements, Determination, Grace with Enlighten to combine all our auras into our reserving of mana and life. And our energy shield doesn't even end because we use the divine shield keystone on our skin of the lords. The other links are pretty simple, just for movement speed, some molten shell, totems with multiple totem support, hatred with enlightened too, because we lack some mana reservation efficiency on the tree, and some movement skill. I'd like to use Leap Slam because we have a good amount of attack speed. Now let's switch to more in-game, more optimized version than I have here in-game, but still there is one problem even for this. It can generate trauma stacks on bosses in the amount that we would like to see. Yeah, we have around 30 to 40 trauma stacks on bossing, and for the casual player it may be enough, but if we want to push this build to real endgame with some uber bosses, 30 or 40 trauma stacks isn't enough. We need more than 100 to have the great amount of damage. Yeah, here is the simulation of how the amount of trauma stacks affect our damage. The other stats we are not interested in because we have the ridiculous amount of survivability with our resistances and armor and physical damage reduction that we have. We have kept chaos resistance, and while using the strength of blood, it's really strong now. It was broken in other leaks, but now it's just a strong keystone. We use 2 clusters for some penetration to cold damage on one side, and the overload keystone on the other side, on the mace cluster javel, to have our permanent fortification. And we have around 27 Fortify, which concludes into the 27% less damage taken from hits, and that's great. We also use additional Forbidden Flesh, Forbidden Flame modifiers for Chieftain's Ancestral Call, and with the cluster on the tree, we get the ridiculous amount of clearance, so mid-splash damage with 5 additional strikes on enemies. That's great. And for mana reservation, we use one Megalomaniac. On this Megalomaniac, we can have some reservation for determination, or for the grace, or maybe for hatred. It depends on what enchantment you have on the Devouring Diadem, and you need to have the opposite one on the Megalomaniac. And we also have Feast of Flesh for some life gain and hit. It's just basic additional life recovery. And if you cannot find such the Megalomaniac, just grab a simple mana reservation small cluster gel with the reservation of hatred or grace or determination, whatever fits in your build. Gear is pretty the same that I've shown in the current version, maybe some minor adjustments for resistances, stats, or whatever, but yeah, it's the fully completed version I wanted to show you. So I think that's all for today. If you have any comments or advices how I should improve this build and how I could get the trauma stack generation, feel free to comment, like, subscribe, and see you next time in the next video. Goodbye!